All right, let's talk about wine. When you picture how it's made, you probably think of rolling hills, maybe some dusty old barrels. This beautiful, natural process, right? Grapes just magically turning into something amazing. But today, we're going to pull back that romantic curtain and take a look at what's really going into the bottle. So yeah, let's get into it.
You know, the whole story of wine is just so ancient. It's wrapped up in all this legend. We read about these epic vintages like Falernian, a wine from ancient Rome that was supposedly so good it was aged for a full century. It creates this perfect, almost mythical image of some pure, untouched drink of the gods. Okay, so what if I told you that the real journey from grape to glass, both back then and right now, is a lot more hands-on? That it's really a story of human intervention, packed with some seriously surprising ingredients and some pretty high-tech stuff. Fish bladders? Oh yeah. Volcanic clay and plastic tanks? You bet.
So let's start at the very beginning and kind of bust that first myth, the idea that winemaking is as simple as just add yeast. It is so much more complicated than that, and the winemaker's craft starts with a huge decision right at the very start of the process.
So at the core of everything, you've got fermentation. It's pretty simple on the surface. These tiny little microorganisms, yeast, they eat the sugar that's in the grape juice, and when they do, they create two things: alcohol and the carbon dioxide bubbles you see fizzing away. Sounds simple enough, but this is exactly where the art and the science really kick off.
Right out of the gate, the winemaker has this huge decision to make. Do they go with the wild yeasts that are just naturally hanging around in the air, on the grapes, in the winery? It's a bit of a gamble. It can add this really unique, specific character, what we call terroir, but you never know quite what you're going to get. Or do they play it safe and use a cultured yeast, one grown in a lab? This gives you consistent, predictable results, and you can even pick a specific strain to bring out certain flavors. This is really the first big choice a winemaker makes to guide what that wine is going to become.
Okay, but what about those legendary old wines, right? That 100-year-old Falernian. Surely that was all natural. Well, not exactly. Let's jump back in time and see what they were really drinking.
Honestly, if we got to taste ancient wine today, we'd probably be pretty shocked. It was usually this cloudy, soupy mix full of sediment, skins, seeds, you name it. And drinking it straight, the Greeks thought that was completely barbaric. They always diluted it with water. And it was almost never just wine. It was a cocktail, flavored with herbs, spices, honey, or even mixed with beer and, get this, seawater. It was a whole different ballgame.
But what's really cool is that there's actually a direct link to these ancient practices that you can still go out and buy today. And that's the Greek wine, Retsina. Its story is the perfect example of how a very practical problem created a totally iconic flavor.
See, that strong pine flavor in Retsina wasn't some grand artistic choice. It was a solution to a problem. Winemakers had to seal their big clay jars, their amphoras, to keep oxygen out. The best sealant they had? Pine resin. Of course, that resin flavor would seep into the wine, and after a while, people just got used to it. They started to expect it, to even like it. So when barrels eventually replaced the clay jars, winemakers just started adding the resin on purpose. A practical fix became a celebrated style.
Okay, so let's jump from ancient history to a more modern myth. This idea that all great red wine absolutely has to be aged in a traditional oak barrel. I mean, barrels are the icon of winemaking, but they come with a whole bunch of challenges that have really pushed winemakers to get creative. So why are people so obsessed with oak? It really all comes down to this cool process called micro-oxidation. See, the wood of an oak barrel isn't perfectly airtight. It lets teeny tiny amounts of oxygen seep into the wine over a long period of time. This slow exposure does amazing things. It softens up those harsh tannins, the stuff that makes your mouth feel dry. It stabilizes the color, and it gives the wine that smooth, rich texture people call mouthfeel.
But here's the catch, and it's a big one. New oak barrels are ridiculously expensive. We're talking thousands of dollars each. And they require tons of work, like constantly topping them off as a little bit of wine evaporates. They call that the angel's share. Plus, after just a few years of use, a barrel becomes neutral. It stops giving off those nice toasty oak flavors, so its biggest benefit is gone. For a lot of wineries, it's just not practical or affordable.
So this economic pressure created this really clever question that has driven a ton of modern innovation. How can you get all the benefits of oak, that crucial micro-oxidation and the flavor, without the massive cost and headache of buying a brand new barrel every few years?
And the solution is a brilliant piece of engineering. You get these alternatives like the flex tank.
It's made from a special kind of plastic that's been engineered to let in the exact same amount of oxygen as an oak barrel. Then, for the flavor, you just add oak staves or chips inside. And look at the difference. The cost is way lower, it lasts for up to 20 years, and it needs way less maintenance. It's basically using chemistry to get a traditional result, just without the traditional price tag.
All right, for our final deep dive, let's talk about how wine looks. We expect wine, especially white wine, to be perfectly crystal clear, right? We kind of associate that clarity with purity. But that beautiful, bright look is almost always the result of another very deliberate and sometimes very surprising step.
You see, if you just left wine to do its own thing after fermentation, it would probably be a little hazy. It's full of these tiny leftover particles, yeast cells, proteins, that kind of thing. To get rid of that haze and make the wine totally clear, winemakers use a technique called fining.
And this is where things get a little weird. This is where we get back to those fish bladders. Fining agents are things that you add to the wine that basically act like a magnet for those hazy particles, clumping them together so they get heavy and sink to the bottom. And the agents themselves can be, well, pretty out there. We're talking isinglass, which comes from fish bladders, gelatin, egg whites, even casein from milk protein. And on the non-animal side, there's bentonite. Yep, a type of volcanic clay. This also explains why you sometimes see unfined or vegan on a wine label. It's a signal that the winemaker decided to skip this step entirely.
So after going through all of this, from picking specific yeasts, to using high-tech tanks instead of barrels, to clarifying wine with volcanic clay, what does it all mean for how we should think about the wine in our glass?
Does knowing about all these little tweaks and techniques make wine feel less natural? Or maybe, does it reveal just how much detailed craft and skill goes into every single bottle? It's this incredible blend of agriculture, science, and art.
And just to put a number on it, in many parts of the world, a winemaker has a toolkit of over 60 different approved additives and processing aids they can legally use to shape that final wine. Each one is a tool. Each one is a choice.
The bottom line is, a modern winemaker is so much more than just a farmer. They have to be a chemist, a technologist, and ultimately an artist. They're using all these tools not to make something fake, but to solve problems and to express what they believe is the absolute best version of the grapes they grew.
So I'll leave you with this. The next time you pour yourself a glass of wine, think beyond just the grape or the country. Think about the hundreds of little decisions that brought that specific wine to you. Are you tasting a wild, risky yeast or a precise cultured one? Is that vanilla note from a real oak barrel or from a high-tech tank? Was it clarified with egg whites or volcanic clay or not at all? You're not just tasting fermented grapes, you're tasting craftsmanship.